Some people are stupid enough to go into caves, bro. Who does that? But today we're reacting to the most painful cave there is of all time.
I don't know why you possibly would go caving, but let's see.
I'll be honest again, bro. If you go in a cave, bro, like, and you die, what did you expect?
Exploring unmapped sections of the Sturkfontein cave in
Oh
South
my
Africa.
days. Would you ever go inside a cave?
Friends, Peter
No,
Verhulsel and
bro,
Malcolm,
I don't even
together,
fit
they plan to
in
lay
a mansion, bro. You
guideline
think I'm
for the
gonna fit in a cave?
Okay, what if it was like a Skull Island
entrance
cave?
to the farthest point of the wet
Hell no,
cave
bro.
area
I'm
known as
chilling, bro.
Miller
I'm
Hall.
living
The
with
plan
it,
was for
the
Nuno to
trees
go
and the
in
lakes and the
place
rivers.
guideline, while
Why
Peter
would
and
I need to
Malcolm
go
waited
there? It's
outside,
mad claustrophobic.
assisting from the surface. Nuno plunged into the water and successfully laid the line, covering a distance of 396
Like, what did they...
feet
Is there
to the
diamonds
ocean.
there? Is there
After
netherite?
the
Why
success,
go there?
The three decided to go back in and follow the new guideline. Once they reached the air pocket at the end, they were satisfied that they had successfully mapped this cave section. So they
Why?
turned around and began to head out, following the line. As Nuno led the group, he suddenly felt Malcolm touch him. Malcolm was
Whoa.
signaling that Peter was no longer
Oh.
behind them. Nuno went back to see
Oh my
where
God.
Peter had gone and
Why?
noticed that he had entered a side tunnel. Nuno tapped
Oh.
Peter to get his attention.
Why
and
would you do
signaled him
that,
to
bro?
return to the guideline and exit the cave. As they headed back, however, Peter disappeared again.
Again?
Nuno and Malcolm
Peter, bro.
assumed he had taken the other exit, avoiding the tight squeeze they themselves used, so they did not go back to look for him. When Nuno and Malcolm surfaced and realized Peter
Where
was not
did he
there,
go
and still hadn't
twice?
come out after a while, they submerged once more to look for him. They
Peter
searched
is
along the
stupid, bro. Oh my
guideline
God,
and
Peter's
the
missing
side
out.
tunnels, but there was no sign of him. After 4 long hours, they ran out of air tanks, and the stirred-up silt reduced visibility to almost nothing.
Oh my
Finally,
God, wait,
late
what
that
happened?
afternoon, they exited the cave and called for help. The fire brigade arrived, but lacking cave diving expertise, had to wait for the police divers to continue the search in the evening. The silt was so stirred up that
Oh.
visibility was heavily
How do
impaired.
you
The
even
police
see at
called off the search
nighttime?
for the night, convinced they would now be searching
Peter is
for a
pissing me
body
off, bro.
rather
Peter,
than a
why would you
survivor.
not go
But
back?
no one realized
Where did he
that
go
Peter was not
twice?
dead at all. He had been sidetracked by a secondary tunnel, and the cave's
Oh
complex
my God,
3D
bro.
structure,
What's wrong with this guy?
combined
At
the
least
lack
tell
of a
you.
guideline, the stirred-up silt, and the darkness made it nearly impossible for him to orient himself. After trying many possible paths, Peter found a small room and decided to wait there for rescuers. He shone his light into the water in hopes of signaling his friends, but when no
Oh.
one came for a long time, he switched it off to conserve the little battery life remaining. He tried making noise by banging his tank on the rocks.
Was he
but
gonna
to no
survive
avail.
this?
I
Eventually,
hope he
he
does.
became exhausted, fell asleep, and lost track of time. After that first night of searching, the
God,
police
he's gonna die
closed
of
off the
CO2
cave
poisoning.
so no one else could enter. Unfortunately, the silt took a long time to settle, so visibility remained.
No, wait.
Convinced
Please
Peter
tell
had
me
not
Peter
survived, the
stays
police
alive.
decided to wait a full week
What?
resuming the search.
Oh
On
my
October
God.
6th, 7 days after Peter's disappearance, they returned but found no sign of him. Another week passed before they tried again.
Nah, he's
Yeah, I
definitely
don't
gone.
think. Yeah,
Meanwhile,
it's
Peter
not
was still
possible to
alive.
make it.
He had
What?
spent 14
Wow.
days in complete
What?
darkness, starving and having lost much of his weight. Hoping for a way out, he decided to follow a passage leading from the small room where he had sheltered. After traveling 120
What did
feet
he
away from the water,
eat for
he
2
discovered
weeks?
it was only a dead end, so he returned to his
Oh my
spot
God.
near the water to wait once more for rescuers. The police continued weekend searches for 6 weeks, but they never found him. and
6
finally called off the
weeks?
search with no result. At that point, they reopened the dry sections of the cave, but kept the water section closed.
Wait, what?
Volunteers then began looking for a connection between the dry and wet cave systems, and Nuno joined them.
No
His
way he
contributions
survived
were
6
crucial.
weeks,
He
right?
was the one who discovered
that-
the
I don't think
connection
so.
where they could enter the wet section of the cave. It was there
Maybe
they
he had
found a
food
set
with
of
him.
footprints leading to a dead end, and soon after,
Oh my God.
Peter's body.
Oh,
Beside his body was a message that
no.
read, "I love you, Cheryl and Ma." It was later discovered that one diver had come
What?
really close to finding him, as he entered an opening that was just 100 feet away from
Oh
the
no!
autopsy revealed that he died of starvation after 3 weeks in the cave.
Bro,
Although
this
we
is
may
disturbing.
criticize Peter's decision to explore on his own, we should also respect the fact that he fought to survive until the very end.
I feel so
Damn,
bad.
Peter.
Bro, it's the police's fault. Why did they take a week, man?
It was March 27th,
Bro, like, I don't think
1982,
they
and
saw
Donald
very well
Wellman,
inside it.
along with his 2 sons,
Yeah, but
Christopher
still,
and
bro,
Roger,
it's like
were
a
about to
tiny
lead
cave.
A group of 12 Boy Scouts on
No,
a
I
day
don't
of
think so,
cave
bro. I think the cave is
exploration.
massive.
This wasn't Donald's first time caving, and even though the passages in the
Bro,
crooked
I would never
swamp
go
and
to a
forests
cave.
were
Looks tiny.
notoriously narrow, he wasn't too concerned.
If
Donald
Mr.
was
Beast
bigger
offered
than
me
the other
money, I wouldn't go
participants,
caving.
So if he could get through, the rest of the group could too. At 2 o'clock, they entered the cave through its
This guy took kids to a cave? Okay.
by 28-inch entrance.
I don't think they're
and
kids.
stopped in a room inside.
But they look like
Donald was
kids.
on the eastern side and noticed several.
Bro, like,
smaller
what is
tunnels
this
leading
cave?
to
This
the
looks
room.
like some,
However,
like-
because they weren't sure which passages would be too narrow, Donald decided to check one. It involved a tight squeeze, but appeared to
Oh
open
my
to
God,
another
hell no, bro.
section,
I'm
so he
never
tried to
going
push
inside.
through. The squeeze measured 18
Hey,
Imagine
bro!
getting stuck
so
in
tight
here.
that he couldn't move
It's
his arms
50
back to lift his head
centimeters.
to see ahead. He was followed by his sons, and while moving forward thanks to the mud,
Oh,
making
he
the
brought his
terrain
son.
slippery,
What
he
this guy's-
reported back to them what was happening. Everything seemed normal until something unexpected occurred. As he pulled himself along, he realized the ground below him was disappearing. Donald
what?
slipped down into a tight
Oh.
crevice, and the slick mud prevented him from stopping his slide.
Nah.
His hands were trapped, leaving him no leverage to pull himself up.
Oh,
Making matters worse,
no.
the path angled about 30 degrees, so he had to fight against gravity. The crevice was just 5 inches wide, and the slippery mud caused his
12
body to
centimeters.
settle more and more. He told his sons to pull on his feet, but after several failed attempts, he told them to get the other adult in the cave, Jim. After a while, Jim also realized they wouldn't be able to free Donald on
Why
their
didn't
own.
they tie a
Donald
rope to
explained
his
that
foot?
some rocks had loosened when he slid and were now wedging against his body. Each time they tried to pull him backward, the loose rocks would slide forward and block the passage.
Oh, no.
Jim exited the cave to call for
Nah,
help.
bro.
Cave
Bro,
rescue
his sons
specialists
are with him!
arrived, and because only one person could squeeze into that narrow space at a time, they tried using ropes to free Donald. This didn't work either, so they brought in tools to try
Why
breaking
not?
some of the rocks. However, given how tight the space was, hours of work led to only small breakthroughs, and Donald's situation grew worse. He was thirsty,
Oh my God.
hungry, and in a very
His head is
cold
upside down too.
environment,
All the
so
blood is going to
hypothermia was
Exactly.
a major concern. The cavers considered entering from the other side to give Donald food and water, but they found that the passage leading to where he laid was extremely narrow. Only two very small cavers, sisters Lynn and Nancy Taylor, were able to fit, but even then, they couldn't reach Donald's
Oh my
head.
Oh,
God.
This
no.
meant there was no way of delivering supplies, so rescuers had to act quickly. They decided to dig from above ground.
Please
down to
tell
where
me they
Donald
make
was
it,
stuck.
man.
The process lasted all day Sunday, getting them close to the required depth. Unfortunately, though, they were about
Oh,
12 feet away from
no.
Donald's
Oh my
position,
God.
These
so they needed
guys!
to dig laterally. Meanwhile, Donald began giving only grunting responses, which indicated he was likely suffering from hypothermia. On Monday morning, as 2 days passed from when he got stuck, the digging continued, but the team encountered another problem.
Oh,
Extremely
man.
hard bedrock layers that were impossible
what?
to dig through. At
Bro,
this point, they weren't sure if Donald was still alive, so they sent a nurse into the cave with a handheld Doppler machine to see if he still had a pulse. She couldn't detect one, but this wasn't definitive proof of death, since she only had access to his very cold legs. Sometimes, the body's core organs can continue functioning after the extremities have stopped registering a pulse.
Wait, why
Seeing
is
how
it cold
quickly
there?
Donald's
Isn't it
condition
supposed to
was
be hot?
deteriorating, rescuers started
No, the
using
caves
their
are
most
cold.
extreme tools, including dynamite, which was
Oh.
extremely risky,
Oh my
but
God,
appeared to be
dynamite.
the only option left. On Tuesday morning, they finally managed to reach his location, and a doctor was sent in immediately, but as many feared, Donald had died. It took an entire day to
No!
retrieve his body, and an autopsy later confirmed he had succumbed to hypothermia sometime between Sunday night and Monday morning. Following his death, the cave system was restricted to limited access.
Man,
Agents
that
all
was
limited
so
access.
close!
Roger Solari and
Close
Martin
that cave,
Farr,
bro.
aged
Never let
26
anyone
and
else go
23
there.
respectively, wanted to map out the Agent Allwed cave system.
Ain't no way this is a real cave, bro. No way you look at
Nah,
this and
bro.
you say, I wanna go there. Bro, this looks some like
At
torture
the time,
device.
John Parker,
Why do
another
people go
explorer,
inside
had
caves,
abandoned the
bro?
mission after discovering
What is
Oh,
this
hell no.
cave?
one of its
Oh
longest
no!
passages. Martin and Roger, however,
You guys
wanted to keep
walked
going to see
inside
what
it,
lay
bro.
beyond. The first
Like I
trip
would
was done
drown
by
in it.
Martin alone because Roger had hurt his knee, making it extremely dangerous for Martin to continue solo. Reaching the third sump was a feat in itself, since the route was not only tortuous but also extremely long.
Yo, they
lasting
need to
for
create a
hours,
robot
as
to
the
go
first
inside these
sump was
caves,
about a
bro.
mile into the
It's like a
cave.
test
The
run.
first two sumps
That's
measured
actually
only
kinda smart.
249 feet and 82 feet, so Martin passed through them
You
relatively
know those robot
easily.
dogs? Oh
However,
my
the
God, I
third
feel like they'd
sump
be
was muddy,
perfect for these
Or
caves.
maybe humans just stop going in caves.
longer.
Yeah,
and
true.
nobody had fully
Like, why
explored
go
it yet,
inside this
so
tight
Martin could
hole?
only hope he had enough air to reach the end. Fortunately, he managed to swim through it, about 850 feet, and on the other side, he found something else interesting, a zigzagging passage,
Oh
roughly
my
1,800
nah,
feet
Hey,
long,
bro.
leading to another sump.
500
Nobody had
meters?
done
That's
it.
bigger than
And Martin
Godzilla
realized
Earth.
he probably wouldn't have enough air to explore it and then return. He spent the next 4 to 5 hours heading back out, planning to wait for
4
Roger
hours?
so they could tackle Sump 4 together on the next trip. When they
Why?
returned on June 15th,
Wait,
wait for
Kong,
Roger
how do
so
you
they could
see
tackle
this design and say, yeah, I'm gonna go inside this, bro?
The thing is, you know what's even
when they
crazier?
returned on June 15th,
I don't even think they know what the
1974,
design
both
is,
Roger and
so they're
Martin
just
brought
going in
extra heat
blindly.
tanks. They successfully reached Sump 4 and began diving it with a guideline to help map the route. After about 400 feet, Roger finished his guideline, and he had sinus problems, even though it wasn't the
What's a
first time.
sinus
Despite
problem?
this, they decided to
Some
continue.
breathing
Martin
problem,
then took out
maybe.
his own guideline.
Bro,
and
your
kept
guideline
going,
finished, go
but they
back,
made an
man, come
important
on.
Mistake. In cave diving, there is a concept called the rule of thirds for air consumption. If you use 1/3 of your air supply on the way in, you need another third to get out, leaving the final third as an emergency reserve. They had already used their first third and should have turned back when Roger's line ran out.
Bro,
Because
don't
Roger
tell me they
had a
turned back,
smaller
bro.
tank
Come
than
on.
Martin assumed Roger would head out while he continued forward. He eventually came to a gravel wall of rock, which could have indicated the sump was ending, and possibly an air pocket. By this point, he was well past the halfway mark of
Oh
his
my
tank,
God,
so
bro.
it was
Why
becoming
would you-
extremely risky. He pushed on
Go
until
back,
he
bro.
reached
Come
the
on.
solid rock, confirming there was
no.
no air pocket. Spotting a passage to
Oh,
the right,
no.
he explored another 29
He
feet,
kept
but it ended
going.
in a dead end. When he backtracked, he was shocked to see Roger still there. Martin quickly
Bro,
signaled
Roger
that
has
they
a
had
smaller
to turn.
tank.
Roger, likely realizing he didn't have enough air to make it back, attempted to locate the same air pocket Martin had been searching for. Martin continued about 130 feet until his main tank ran out, forcing him to switch to a reserve tank. That would give him
Oh, he
only
had a
about
reserve.
300 feet in Sump 4 and another 850 feet in
Oh
Sump
my
3, barely enough.
days.
However, he had previously placed a partially filled tank between Sump 3 and Sump 2, and he aimed to reach that. Finally emerging from Sump 4, Martin sat on the bank, waiting for Roger, who, remember, had a smaller tank. If he didn't
Oh my
appear
God, bro.
soon,
Come on.
it
Tell
would
me
be a
Roger makes
huge
it back.
problem. After 20 minutes with
Come
no
on.
sign of
Nah,
Roger,
he's gone.
Martin
20
realized
minutes.
that if Roger had
Oh,
surfaced
he
from
came.
Sump 4
No.
at that moment, he likely wouldn't have enough air left to get through Sump 3. After an hour, Martin was certain Roger's air had run out. Martin entered the water again and tried pulling the guideline to make it tense, but it didn't. It was no longer connected. It had been cut
Oh
at about the
God.
430-foot mark. This
No.
was probably where Roger needed to change tanks. Because switching them wasn't a simple task at the time, he might have put his arm through the line to avoid losing it, twisted his body to reach the valve, and become tangled, forcing him to cut the line to move
Yo.
freely. This, combined with the silt kicked up by
Bro,
movement,
what's the
likely
silt,
reduced
man?
the
Silt,
ability,
bro.
and he
Why does it
swung
keep
the
coming
wrong
up every
way.
time?
At that point, there was no doubt Roger had exhausted
Bro,
his
he
air.
went the
Martin
wrong
stayed
way.
calm and managed to navigate the next 3 sumps safely. He alerted the authorities immediately, and the search for Roger's body began. Martin himself joined the search, along with many others. However, Roger's remains were not found until 1986, 12 years
Oh
later.
my God.
Recovering the body was
Ooh.
deemed too risky, so it was left in the cave, and a plaque was placed near the entrance of Sump 1.
12
In
years?
1987,
Yo, how
another
did they not
explorer
find his
passed
body?
through Sump 4 and finally located the air pocket, 875 feet in, the very
so
one
there was
Roger
an
and
air
Martin had
pocket.
hoped to find. It was called the Against All Odds Chamber. Martin stated that after this incident, he never broke the rule of thirds again. He went on to have a remarkable diving
Yeah, why would you ever
Today,
break
the
that rule,
entrance to
bro?
the cave system is locked, and only specific, experienced divers
Nah.
are granted a key.
Bro, I feel
Stop
bad,
doing
man.
specific experienced divers. You lock it for everyone.
Exactly, man. But that was the craziest and most wildest cave deaths ever. Kong, how many likes for me and you to go to a cave?
20 billion likes, bro. Like, no joke. If we get 20 billion likes, I might think about it. If not, then hell no, I'm not going in a cave.
Anyways, that's gonna be the end of this video. I hope you guys like it. If you did, hit that subscribe button. Peace.